The president of Ivory Coast says his country is on track to hold much delayed presidential elections and is moving beyond the violence that contributed to repeatedly postponing that vote. VOA West Africa correspondent Scott Stearns has that story.
President Laurent Gbagbo says the success of the just concluded African Development Bank meeting in Abidjan shows that Ivory Coast is making progress toward resolving its political crisis. Opposition leaders plan to protest the long-delayed vote during the bank's annual general meeting, but agreed to delay those demonstrations after talks with President Gbagbo. He says that shows Ivory Coast is moving forward.
Trust us. The Ivorian crisis is over. Have confidence in us. What unites the sons and daughters of this country is much stronger than what can divide them. The unity that was shown from the Ivorian politicians when it comes to this meeting of the African Development Bank is at the same time a good sign as well as a message.
The African Development Bank moved its headquarters from Abidjan in 2003 after a brief civil war divided the country. Presidential elections meant to reunite the country have been postponed 8 times since President Gbagbo's mandate expired in 2005. 3 months ago, the president dissolved the government and dismissed the Electoral Commission because he said officials were illegally registering as many as 400,000 people. A new electoral commission is now distributing voter lists that include the names of more than 1 million people who must prove their Ivorian citizenship.
The gray list is supposed to include the lists of the persons whose status as electoral voters is not yet defined and principally linked to the problem of nationality. They need to present documentary evidence to specify if they are who they are and if they have the right to be a voter or not.
Questions of nationality in Ivory Coast focus primarily on immigrants from Burkina Faso and Mali. The Electoral Code was amended 15 years ago to disqualify candidates if either of their parents were not originally from Ivory Coast or if the candidate had not lived in the country for the preceding 5 years. That disqualified former Prime Minister Alassane Ouattara, who returned to the International Monetary Fund when Henri Konan Bédié took power in 1993. Ouattara, Bédié, and President Gbagbo are all candidates in the upcoming election, which regional diplomats hope will happen by the end of the year. Scott Stearns, VOA News, Dakar.